Hi, welcome to Tobago Chronicles Part 4. As you know, this is a show that focuses on the endeavor and exploits of Tobago's sons and daughters in the development of independent Trinidad and Tobago. And so in this episode, we are focused on what our people have accomplished in pushing Trinidad and Tobago forward in the 1970s. Earlier programs would have focused on the accomplishments and the contributions in the 1960s. So let us get now to viewing. But just before we do that, let me also take the opportunity to indicate that in the next segment, we always do a little on the Chronicles of Push, an organization very much involved in all that we are doing here today. So Anne-Marie, my co-host, will have some more persons who have been stalwarts of Push over the last 25 years on set with her. So stay tuned. We go firstly to my retrospective on Tobago's contribution to national development in the 1970s. This really is a chronicle of the trailblazing accomplishments of Tobagonians in broad areas of endeavor within the political administration as well as in terms of societal endeavors. Successive PNM administrations till 1986 relied on Tobago intellect and expertise to chart and execute policies that issued national progress in foreign relations, agriculture, policing, education, culture, and public finance. Other Tobagonians were trailblazers in the sporting arena, business, music, and the arts. Larry Yearwood announced to the national fraternity that Tobagonians and African descendants in general had a high pedigree in lawn tennis and would not be limited to the role of ball boys when he captured the national lawn tennis title at age 15 in Port of Spain. Within 3 years, he was established the #1 player in Brandon Cup tennis, which was contested annually among the Caribbean countries. In 1979, Yearwood became the first tennis player to appear in the multi-sport event, the Pan American Games. Tobago's mastery in the protective services reached its zenith in 1974 when a Mason Hall boy became the first national to attain the position of police commissioner. Eustace Bernard had an exceptional career in policing up to the retirement of Tony May from our local constabulary. It was under Eustace Bernard that a number of special units emerged requiring levels of specialization in policing. Tobago still made more contributions, with a Palatavere boy rising to become the Secretary of the African, Caribbean, and Pacific Group, then the largest trade bloc in the world. In the diplomatic service, Reginald Dumas was emerging as a dynamo in foreign relations in Africa and later the USA and India.
And I was one of 16 people from throughout the English-speaking Caribbean chosen to form the nucleus of the federal government foreign service. And we were sent off for training. Academic training. I was sent to Geneva, Switzerland, to the Graduate Institute of International Studies there, followed by a practical stint in a British mission, a British High Commission or British Embassy or British Consulate General. I was sent to the British Embassy in Rome and I did a stint also at the British Consulate General in Naples. But while we were all there doing this course, all 16 of us, there was a referendum in Jamaica.
Oh, that time.
This was in 61, to give the Jamaican people the opportunity to say whether they wanted Jamaica to continue to be in the Federation or not. And the people of Jamaica voted against. Now, there were 10 units of the Federation, and this led to Eric Williams' famous statement, 1 from 10 leaves naught. So, there I am in Italy, and because the academic year in Geneva had finished, so I got off to Rome. There I am in Italy, and I'm told, well, the Federation has in essence collapsed. I finished my training in Rome, and I came back home. And in December, I think, of 61, late November, early December of 61, and the Federation was formally wound up in May of 62. What happened then was that those of us from Trinidad and Tobago who had received training under the federal government were then invited now to become the nucleus of the Trinidad and Tobago Foreign Service. So it was Frank Abdullah, it was Eustace Seigneuret, it was Wilfred Naimul, it was Solomon Lutchman, who is unfortunately no longer with us, Dennis Solomon, and I. 5 of us formed the nucleus of the Foreign Service of Trinidad and Tobago in the few months before independence in August. So, he was interested in Europe at that time. It was the European Economic Community, and he was very interested in that. He knew a great deal about it, I have to say. Yes, we did give lectures and sort of seminars to permanent secretaries. So there we were, junior people, telling the permanent secretaries in Trinidad and Tobago what to do, what not to do, how to do it, if it had to be done. Because they had been exposed, we had been exposed, and we had to guide. We wrote up papers on foreign policy, what position should we take towards the United States or Canada or Africa or India or wherever. Yes, we did all that. So it would be fair to say that yes, we did help to shape foreign policy in those early days. So all of us who had received the trainings were promptly sent out. I was sent to Washington. Ellis Clark, the late Ellis Clark, Sir Ellis Clark, was then the ambassador. So Dennis Solomon and I were sent out there. Eustace Seigneuret was sent to New York. Wilfred Naimul was sent to Canada. Solo Lutchman was sent to Caracas. And we stayed out there and did what we could because very small staff. And there's very little, and Washington is a very difficult city if you want to do your work properly. Extremely difficult city. But we did what we could. We could not cover the bases. It's not possible. The embassy was not big enough for that. If we were the size of the British embassy or the size of the Japanese embassy, yes. But you're a small embassy with 4 or 5 people in it, and you simply can't do too much. So you have to concentrate on what are put to you as the prime interests of Trinidad and Tobago. What are the priorities? It is trade or whatever. If it is nationals, trying to get nationals to come back home to work at least for a period, train nationals, whatever it happens to be. You had there's tourism where you're trying to get people to visit from the United States. You had to try and you had to prioritize. I tried, without too much success, to get the government of Trinidad and Tobago more interested in links with Africa. At the time in '73, we not only had that embassy in Ethiopia, but the government had set up a high commission in Lagos as well, which was then the capital of Nigeria. They now moved to Abuja. But Lagos was the capital then. John Donaldson, the former minister, was the high commissioner. And Donaldson and I tried to get a greater interest, not on the basis of race, although people would say so, but on the basis of interests. You need people from the developing world if you want to push your agenda, whatever the agenda happens to be, forward. You have to work with people from the developing world. Trinidad and Tobago is a small place. What influence do we have on world affairs? The post that I think I enjoyed most in terms of relations across the board, including technical cooperation, was India. It was India. So I spent a lot of my time in Washington, walking the halls of Congress, because that's where the power is, Congress and the White House. Yeah. Walking the halls of Congress, speaking to senators, speaking to congressmen, to try to get them to understand what was happening in the Caribbean and to make it easier for exports to go into the United States without all the duties that other people would have to pay. We even managed to get through a lot of lobbying at the White House. Reagan was the president at the time. We managed to get Belize, because Belize had been excluded from the Caribbean Basin Initiative on the ground that it was a Central American state and not Caribbean. And we argued for Belize. There were three of us who were chosen to represent the CARICOM missions there. We worked with the Export-Import Bank, of course, in terms of investment, and so on and so on. We even, or I, tried to get an investment here in Tobago for Bacolette.
Really?
Yes. To set up a couple of hotels right outside there, off the Claude Noel Highway.
At the birth of the Republic of Trinidad and Tobago on September 24th, it was indisputable that Tobago was distinctly shaping the polity, economy, and society of the nation. The National Awards Committee, which comprised of Trinidadians, had found it necessary to bestow high honor on about 13 Tobago sons and daughters in the 7 years since this National Awards was inaugurated. However, a Trinity Cross still eluded the Tobago child at that time, and no Tobagonian had received the coveted Sports Personality of the Year award. That title in 1976 went to the country's first gold medalist in the Olympic competition, Hasely Crawford. Tobago athletics quality was primarily limited to field events, and there was growing respect for the Tobago throwers, but none had progressed to national teams for major international meets. Roy Alfred made a Carifta Games team in 1978 and went on to win the first gold medal in shot put by a TNT athlete. And he also became Tobago's first double medalist in Carifta when he captured silver in discus competition. He did not appear in another Carifta Games and faded from the spotlight quickly thereafter, although his distances were not surpassed for several years by his countrymen. Two sprinters eventually broke into the national team for overseas competition in 1978. Rebecca Roberts was a barefooted sensation who held both the national junior 100 and 200 meters records at the age of 15. She made the Commonwealth Games women's relay team, running with the likes of Janice Bernard. Linton Williams was also the best senior runner Tobago had seen, and he rivaled the best home-based sprinters in the country. In 1978, he participated and performed with distinction in local meets and was named in the Commonwealth Games relay team, and also competed in the Pan American Games relay team in the following year, 1979. The nursery for these newfound sprint talents was the annual Village Olympics, and Kenan Bonacord excelled for a few years in this competition. Boxing would also see a revival with Claude Noel the Roxborough-born fighter who secured the national lightweight crown in 1973 and who was involved in 2 epic battles with the flashy Guyanese Lennox Blackmore in the 1976-77 period. These contests made local promoters salivate with the prospect of massive crowds following for boxing in Trinidad.
To become lightweight champion of Trinidad and Tobago, I fought Fitzroy Giuseppe. Fitzroy Giuseppe then had over 49 fights under his belt, international fights. He had already fought for the World Lightweight Championship of the world against a guy from Korea, which he did lose. When I went to fight for that championship fight with Fitzroy, I wasn't given an opportunity or a chance to win that fight.
It was against all odds.
It was against all odds. Even Carlos Mark at the point in time told me, Claude, it's a tight fight. I fought a guy they call, he was from Panama.
Was he a world rank fighter? Because
I don't know if he was world ranked or what, but it was an international time title we was fighting for.
And where was that fight held?
That fight was held in Trinidad.
Right.
In Trinidad. We went, I think I stopped that guy in the 8th round, something like that. I think I stopped him in the 8th round for the title.
For the Latin American. And this was when you now entered into the top 10 rankings of the WBC.
Yeah.
Right? So you were now in an arena where the prize money for you could look a little healthy.
Could be healthy, so to speak.
Right. So tell us now a bit about your experiences as Latin American champion and some of the fights you would have had outside of Trinidad, because you had a lot of fights in the beginning in Trinidad. Where was the first place that you fought outside of Trinidad and Tobago, and what success you had?
The first place that I fought outside of Trinidad and Tobago, that was in Orlando, Florida. I went out there and I was campaigning in America then, in Orlando, Florida. And one of the first fights that I fought was for a guy they call Warren Matthews.
Now you can see it on the fighter on the left. That is Claude Noel of Trinidad, #1 contender. And Gonzalez keeps backing away. And now Noel does the backing away, and Gonzalez usually likes to fight moving forward.
Elizabeth Dennis, in the late 1970s, inspired Trinidad girls to pick up corkball cricket with her batting exploits for the national women's cricket team and eventually the West Indies women's team, which in those days had limited opportunities for overseas competition.
Well, I started playing cricket officially in 1973 with the Mason Hall Cricket Club. There was a player who used to play for Mongrace at the time by the name of Angela Balfour. She left Mongrace and came to Mason Hall, where she is originally from, and opened a team. Avengers Cricket Club was then Gaylords at the time. They renamed it Avengers. I became the captain of the team. Got picked on the national, we went to Trinidad national trials. I got picked in 1975 with the national team. Well, Louise Brown, she used to do everything. She used to bowl, bat, wicket keep, everything. You have Anne Brown, you had Trillian Bonaparte, Caroline James, had a few, Envis Williams. From there, well, we had people like Mr. Bertil Sinclair. He helped me a lot. Besides what I knew, Mr. Bertil Sinclair helped me a lot, you know, coaching us. And I made the national team. that year for the first player from Mason Hall. Then in 1982, they picked a West Indies team in 1980 where I was a reserve. But they went nowhere. That trip was to go to Australia. They went nowhere. Then in 1982, they picked a national team to go to Jamaica. And I had people like Clint York, Neil Skeet, John Pollard. They helped me a lot, along with Etelbot Thomas and Roy Edwards. They helped me a lot. I made 150 not out at that time, 50 overs now. And I made 150 not out. I had the bowlers, I heard the bowlers in Jamaica that they are not bowling me. And the captain had to take and bowl herself, Jennifer Sterling. She took the ball and bowled it herself. They had a bowler by the name of Big Bird, had the St. Lucian girls running. I said, if she only bowled to me, knowing how those boys used to bowl to me in the nets on the concrete, I said, if she bowled to me, she came like a spinner in a hurry. Well, my year 1982, in which I won the Vitco Awards, in the local competition, I made about 3 centuries. I could remember very well against Skin and Bonaccord, I made 140 not out. We won the competition that year. We went to Trinidad, we had the trials there and got picked on the national team. I made 500 and something runs. I made in the Caribbean tournament and locally 500. I took 42 wickets. I had a batting average of 82. Went up for Whitco Awards. I remember when Miss Jean Camino, who was the secretary of the Trinidad and Tobago Women's Cricket Association, said, we are sending you up for Whitco Awards. I was so bashful. I said, who, me? You know, them time I young. She said, yes, we are sending you up. And when I went up, I was on the TV there, I was sitting there, and I turned and I said, my God, I wonder how I will feel if I win this. And when I heard my name called, but I was always a brave person, eh? When I heard my name called, I just got up and I smiled. And I went up and, oh boy, I remember when they asked me about how I get so good, you know. I said, well, I was a tomboy. I used to play outer man. And the whole complex started laughing, you know. Yeah, it was nice. It was a great feeling.
Over the 5-year period, 2002 to 2007, the Youth Build program graduated approximately 400 young Tobagonians who had full exposure to the education, training, and service of being a youth builder. Today, the Tobago Chronicles will take you inset to a graduation ceremony that will help you to understand the full extent of what the learning, growing, and service was all about. We listen as valedictorian Shirla Isaac presents.
Honorable Ms. Cynthia Alfred, Deputy Chief Secretary and Secretary of Community Development and Culture, Mr. Wendell Berkeley, Assistant Secretary in the Division of Community Development and Culture, Councillor Tracy Davidson, Mrs. Gloria Carrington, Administrator of Community Development, Mr. William Mackenzie of the Board of Directors of Push Foundation, media personnel, distinguished guests, management staff, tutors, fellow graduates, parents, friends, good evening. It may not be apparent today, but I entered the Youth Build training program with a quiet disposition, shy, reserved, very uncertain of what will unfold over the next 9 months. Very soon, however, it was clearly determined, as in real life, that the level of my input will determine the level of my output. My fellow participants also had mixed feelings, but we all had great expectations and hoped for success. What is remarkable about Youth Build training? Well, firstly, orientation whets the appetite. During the first month, we experienced a living camp for 1 week where we got an opportunity to interact very closely with each other. Debates, mock parliament, ballroom dancing, campfire, tour of Tobago, hikes, talking out sessions, a little noise, a little tear for those who were missing home. Even cooks emerged during this wonderful experience. Our growth process began with emphasis on self-development, career planning, and goal orientation. Our educational program provided a medium for attitudinal change to equip us for the world of work. We were exposed to training in customer service, business studies, computer literacy, swimming, first aid and CPR, disaster management, beauty culture, youth development, family life education, food and beverages, just to name a few. Youth Build not only emphasizes learning, community service is also a vital component. It was a bit tedious at times maintaining recreational sites, historical sites, Providence Aqueduct, community service in schools, research, assisting with school sports and international sporting activities like Carifta Games. Sometimes the sun was hot for soul, but youth builders did it all. We crossed the finish line. Hail to our community officers, Mr. Dexter Brooks and Ms. Leela Isaac. Like an insurance company, you are insured when you leave the Youth Build program. Failure is not an option. In closing, we thank all our tutors and members of staff for their support, and I admonish my fellow participants, you must be a believer if you want to be an achiever. Don't sit back and take what comes. Go after what you want. Be a winner. Learn, grow, and serve. It can be done. I thank you.